I'm doing fabulous. How about you, David?
I'm doing wonderful. A lot going on. Lots of shifts been happening. I'm ready for the new moon that we have coming.
I'm hoping this new moon is a one that will clear stuff because the last 2 weeks, a lot of people I'm talking to, dialoguing with, are they're really going through a very confused time, and I think part of it is the moon and its activity in the chart as the sun is in square to everything in Pisces, that Chiron, Neptune, Piscean activity, and then the moon-sun interaction. It's made for a very confusing week.
And we also have Neptune going retrograde. That can confuse things with a square to Mars. I mean, there is a lot of confusing energy, but it's shifting. I really believe this is shifting energy, fated energy. I always look at the planets when they go retrograde as fate stepping in, and so I think this is important fate.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And then the new moon on Saturday, we're a little projecting from Friday to Friday here, but the big event is going to be happening Saturday, right after people get up and have their morning coffee. At least on the East Coast. On the West Coast, you guys would probably still be in slumberland. But that renewal of the moon, I think, is going to be significant because, it's setting there peripherally interactive with Jupiter. It's pulling in kind of an edgy angle to, like I said, the Neptune Chiron Piscean thing. And then we got, Mercury, which is just almost like a bullet heading forward in Cancer. So Mercury is going to be leading the crowd for a while here now. Not for a long time, but for a while.
And we step into Friday in this weekend. This is a big kite in the chart. A kite is a very powerful alignment between a grand trine with a nice other sextiling, beautiful triangle, but then it creates this big opposition as the backbone to the kite, which when you look at a kite, there always is that backbone. And this backbone, I think, is us facing a lot of our fears, facing a lot of the change that's coming into our life, and finding new emotions and how we emotionally will handle the new changes that we've been faced with in our life. And these are changes that create concrete. They really can set the concrete, and you just can't re-concrete it again. It's solid rock. You're going to need to call up the construction demolition team if you're going to want to break it, which could be very hard. So I think we're having to accept the change emotionally, not fear the change. And there's a huge opportunity here, which I think for a lot of people, because this was a very weird dark moon that came in and through Taurus, and I think that for a lot of people didn't know how to accept a lot of these changes that have been happening this week. But if you do accept it, you'll find out why this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that's, of course, happening as we progress this week and then the coming weeks is we've got Pluto in retrograde and we've got Uranus in advance. And they have been in a very tight square for what seems like eternity here. And thank God that square is finally starting to disintegrate. And a lot of that stress that we see just in mass consciousness, you go anywhere out in public, go to the shopping mall, you go to events, go to the movies, anything like that. And there's just a very subtle sense that people are in expectation of the other shoe falling. And we've had all these events where people are acting out and creating chaos in large collections of people. And I think that as this stressed out angle starts to finally advance forward and separate, I think we're going to see things get a lot more calm and people are going to start feeling comfortable again just being in their skin.
Yeah, people are going to step into that emotional comfort like you described there. And that's what Venus and Mercury opposing Pluto and part of this big kite are bringing. It is bringing a new sense of comfort in the new structure that your life is being built at. And at the same time, having the mind be okay with all this. I mean, this is a powerful new moon happening while Mercury is opposing Pluto. So I think it's funny that the mind is not only in connection with the new moon and Jupiter, but is in connection with a big opposition to Pluto, but also this big grand trine we've been talking about. So opportunities to be had, leaving behind of so much of the past and stepping into a new attitude of everything that's coming. And I think that brings just as much comfort as the emotions do. So I think on both levels, we're accessing this new self. And, you know, right when you think you understand the way that it's all going to turn out, you know, this is what's happened after December 21st, 2012. It just changes, and there's just more change. And Gemini is all about change. There's so much change happening, and especially when you have a big T-square that has formed too, with Mercury and Venus, that are part of a T-square to this Uranus-Pluto square. Like you talked about that Pluto-Uranus square. I mean, there is tension, but the tension brings you into the right position. And so, you know, it's like being on a boat and being asked to like jump out of the boat when you're just like not ready to. But in order to do that, you know, you're not going to hit the iceberg. So it's
right,
like,
yeah,
it's like just do it. You know, it's fine. And I think that's what Mars and this Neptune square are teaching is, sure, you don't know how it's going to turn out in the water, but trust in spirit, trust in the flow, allow this to happen, and make sure that you're listening to your gut, and make sure that your mind's not stopping that.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that I keep going back to over and over again is this really, you know, exact trine now between Saturn and Neptune. And Saturn is always trying to get us to look at things that we have restrictions, inhibitions, and fears around. And, you know, Saturn is kind of like the teacher that scares us silly. It's the boogeyman teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of people are going to have to confront, as you had said, fear images, and learn how to penetrate that, how to get beyond that as this veil continues to be lifted. Because, you know, we keep going back and referencing that 2012 event, and that shift that apparently did occur, because now we're beginning to see these aftershocks, and we're beginning to understand what it was the universe is trying to expose us to.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is here we are in Gemini, which is opposite of Sagittarius, which this is now the opposite side of that last final buildup to what happened in December 21st. That was a very weird time. I mean, if we look 6 months ago, there was the big school shooting that happened 6 months ago. It was right before we built up in December 21st. So, you know, we've come a long way from that time period. And this is a big check into the big understanding, the big reveal. Whenever the Sun and Jupiter come together, which we were talking about before this, which is in the next 2 weeks, there is a big reveal from the universe, a big understanding that I think we're all going to come into, and a closing of the last year. And so this is so important times to make sure that we allow Spirit to have us jump out the boat and pay attention to the relationships that are coming in and the ones that are going, because relationships are under the knife. They're an emotional knife, you know. Are we really feeling that connection? And that this weekend, in the beginning of this week that comes up, it really does test that. I mean, Venus comes into a huge T-square and a trine, but mainly it's a kite. What relationships are going to fly and which ones are going to stay on the ground? And I think the wind that keeps the kite going is your allowing of Spirit to keep the wind flowing, that you're not going to need to bring a fan out and control it and blow it to make your kite flow. You know, I think that you're going to need to allow you to be put in the right position by Spirit to let the wind come up and pull you in the right relationships, the right people, and the right sense of self to get you in the right position.
Yeah, exactly. And then as we move through the weekend and advance into Monday and Tuesday, we get to watch the moon as it separates with that new cycle. Number one, it's going to hit Jupiter, and then it'll be moving into Cancer and illuminating both Venus and Mercury. So we're going to see a lot of revelation, and then the ability to comprehend what has been revealed. So this is going to be a very positive new moon, whereas the last couple of new moons had dark cycles attached to them. They had very intense feelings that were coming up, and I think we're going to have a new moon that brings a lot lighter kind of energy into play.
Yeah, this is a taste of the summer because as the moon steps into Cancer and gets out of that Jupiter energy, that's where Jupiter's coming into next. So we start to feel a little taste, especially that we have Mercury here, we have Venus here. This is our emotions feeling. And how funny, the emotions join the kite and the T-squares as well. So it is a taste of the summer. So how you feel on Monday, I think, will really reveal what your summer will feel like. I think it will also reveal of how I think of what the new chapter is starting in your life, what that's going to feel like. And this new chapter is, of course, we could say emotionally based because it's in Cancer, but I think it's a lot more than that. I think it's us finding our inner securities. I think it's finding ways for us to shine. The sun does get really powerful in Cancer, and you know, you can be the crab that's hidden underneath the shell in the corner, or you could be out shining bright, dancing and getting your sun and getting your waves in. And I think that we're finding ways to either glisten in the sun or crab ourselves in the corners. And it really is two energies. It is fear or love in the emotional field. And I think that this is going to test if you're in a place of love or if you're still in a place of fear. And especially with this big T-square and especially with this big kite in opposition to Pluto, that's what this is testing. And the moon tests us. So this beginning of the week will show you what you need to work on yourself. You know, that not only are the planets just showing you or revealing to you where you're at in your life, but they're giving you the opportunity to be happy, and that you're going to have to put a little work in if you're not, and it will show you where you need to put your work in.
Right, exactly. And, you know, as everything continues to advance into Cancer, we'll have the sun transiting over Jupiter and bringing a lot of warmth and that expansive energy. Then the sun will enter Cancer, and immediately we'll start to feel that influence of Neptune in Pisces in trine to the sun. So, because by then Neptune is fully in reverse, it is going to be going backwards as the sun approaches that trine, advancing in Cancer. And I think that's when a lot of inner illumination is going to come up, where we finally really get the big picture. We have a deeper understanding of our connectivity to the universe, and we have a new vision for the word God. You know, because right now I think everybody has kind of an ambiguous idea about what God is, but I think a lot of these transits that we're seeing going on right now are trying to get an intimate vision of how we are connected to God into focus for us.
I love that perspective, because this is a lot of what we're here to do with Neptune and Pisces is find that energy. And I think that Saturn making the trine, like we've talked about, gives us the ability to really anchor into that feeling and to anchor into that knowing. But you have to find it within, especially now that Neptune goes retrograde. The deep spiritual work really does come within. I think that you've understood of how to access spirit in your outer world very well. But I think that on your inner world, you're going to have to do a lot of work now. And when Saturn starts to slow down, which it is, it's coming almost to a halt here, and especially in July when it goes direct, things get a little funky when Saturn goes slow. And so, you know, as this slowing down effect comes, don't let it, you know, upset you if things take a little bit longer. And especially that this week we have the Mercury-Venus conjunction, which is squaring Uranus, which you're going to have to keep finding new ways, new understandings, you know, tap into your epiphanies a little bit more, tap into your electricity, try new things. Don't get caught up in thinking, just getting sad over one thing. I think that you're going to have to be challenged to find another reason to be happy, even when maybe the first reason you want to be happy isn't there, that it's going to force you to try new ways and to not be feared out by that one opportunity, because we are in Gemini, which can be very narrow-minded. We can be very focused on one way. There's only one way to be happy, but no, there's a lot of other ways. And I think that that's the challenge of this week. So those that are able to do that and doing their spiritual work and working on the inside and opening up and allowing bigger things to happen and allowing to try new things, you'll be fine. For those that just want it to be their way and 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 if they're not happy because it didn't happen exactly the way they want to, they're in for a really big surprise. So
yeah, and a rough landing, I think, because I think that we are going to see a lot of people who've been teetering on the brink finally lose control, because of course that's the only way you can understand what it is that you're doing wrong, is when you hit the wall, and you gain that insight. Oh, well, I've been setting myself up for this particular event for the last 6 months or the last 3 years or whatever. But as you were mentioning, as everything else is moving forward and advancing and going to ultimately end up kind of doing the dance around Saturn as it's slowing down and then going stationary direct, we have Mars still advancing, and it's going to be trining that Saturn placement. So that's going to be the redeeming quality. Mars is going to still give us the energy to get our work done. And so I think the next 3 months are going to be a lot of fun if you are committed to getting the work done.
yeah, and you better get ready to get the work done, because guess what comes up in half a year from now? We have a Mars retrograde coming. So they only happen once every 2 years, and those are hard times. when you take Mars off the bat, which if you go look at an astrology chart, whenever Mars is in the back, that means he's getting ready for his retrograde. So Mars is in the back, and he's slowing down day by day. Even though he is moving, he isn't. I would start to get the things together right now in your life. If you crash, good. You learned on how to move forward in the right way, because a lot of these events are leading for a great 2014, because there's a lot of other big shifts happening in 2014. But I think that you're right, that the power is now. The power is now, and to push forward. And it really is going to be an exciting energy, because we are building up for the next week when the Sun-Jupiter conjunct, which is going to happen on Wednesday, the 18th, 19th, all that time period. And so that this is all leading you towards a big reveal. So put the work in now, and like we said, allow Spirit to take you in that boat and push you out, even if you don't feel like it might be right because your mind says so. If it's right. And I think that you just got to go with that instinct.
Exactly. And, the one other kind of edgy thing is going to be when Mars, as it's advancing, squares Chiron. Mm-hmm. Because that's going to challenge you on, are you willing to allow yourself to be healed? I hear a lot of rhetoric from people about, oh, I'm healing myself, or, oh, I've healed this part of my life. And the reality is that healing is not something that you force to happen. It's something that you allow to happen. And when Mars actually squares that Chiron, that's when you're going to figure out that, yeah, I have to surrender. I have to let myself be healed.
Yeah, and Chiron is ready to go retrograde next week.
Yes. One more retrograde, just to make all of us pay attention.
Yeah, and if we're paying attention to retrograde motion, let's be real. We have a lot of planets retrograde. It's kind of nice that Uranus isn't, but he's getting ready to retrograde too in July. So a lot of the events that we talked about in April, in March, in February, and the buildup, I mean, that was when all the planets were direct, right? So pay attention to what the last 3 or 4 months brought in your life. If you didn't do much, that's probably because maybe you missed opportunities. And I hate to say it, that there have been lots of opportunities that have been brought your way, and that they've been all pushing to get to this point to where the fate can take over. That's what I look at, is like, okay, we got you here, and now here's the retrogrades. Fate's taking over, and the reviews are taking over, and the ability to receive all this energy that you've been pushing forward. But if you didn't push forward much in the last 3 months, if you didn't really take all the opportunities, and this is for people who have been spiritual and tuned and been paying attention, this is where you reap the rewards in the retrogrades. But most people that write astrology books or that look at these retrogrades hate it, is because they're not reaping the rewards. They're reaping there's not much to receive left. It's like everybody's getting big fat checks and you're getting a 99-cent check. What are you going to go do? Buy a McChicken sandwich at McDonald's? I mean, it's not going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is going to be very reflective of the amount of effort you have been extending to make all of these things work in your own personal life. Well, and this new moon, the card for this new moon, interestingly enough, is the World card, the Le Monde, or the Universe card, however you want to perceive it. But what this card is suggesting is that the entire cosmos is yours. It's available to you. You have to expand your horizons in order to encompass it. So really, this new moon is a planting moon in many, many ways, in that if you are willing to envision and to expand your capacity to accept things, you can accept some very, very significant changes and transformations in your life. And as we move out of the weekend and start to move forward in the week, look at that, the strength card. So the people who have been putting in the required effort are going to get that validation by recognizing that, oh, I am empowered. I have more strength now than I have had for the last 5 months or 5 years. So it's, you know, it's really nice to see that kind of energy back to back, having the World and the Strength card. And then as we continue to advance, with that moon beginning to wax toward the full cycle, and it'll go full in 2 weeks, we have the Empress. So this is when you have to nurture. This is when you have to make sure that all of the things that you are trying to have appear in your life, and the things that you are trying to cultivate in your life, it needs water, it needs to have the weeds pulled, it needs a little bit of fertilizer. So you got to do that kind of work. You've got to be the nurturer, and then you're going to have a really spectacular new moon event that'll last for 2 weeks, filled with a lot of happiness.
You pulled 3 major arcana cards too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's a signal. That's a big one. And for those that don't, pull tarot, to get 3 major arcana in a tarot reading is a very powerful reading. Right.
And kind of a final synopsis of this. We don't have a major arcana, but we have the minor arcana, and look at that. This one keeps coming up over and over again for people. And this card is saying, don't try to drag the corpse with you. If you look here, you'll see there's a body on the beach, and it's got 10 swords in it. It is beyond dead, so leave the past behind. And you'll also notice that there's that band of gold on the horizon. A new dawn is about to begin. So get ready for that new dawn in your own personal experience of life on a small planet in a remote corner of the universe.
A very remote corner, the boonies.
Yes. Yes. Well, we're actually not even in the Milky Way galaxy. We're in that dwarf Sagittarius galaxy that is a very small galaxy that is colliding with the Milky Way. Mm-hmm. So, and that is something you have to factor into astrology also, is the fact that a lot of the old paradigms and the old belief systems have changed because we have, in fact, recognized our place more completely in relationship to the cosmos.
That's what it all is awareness in every form, and that's why we bring this show, is to make you aware of the energy of what's going to happen this week and with this new moon, and more importantly, just in the energy flow and the energy flow of how things are flowing, because you can pick up on it, you can feel it, and that's what this week is about, is in your own life learning to feel that flow and leave behind a mind that doesn't allow you to access it, because those are the people that are hurting the most right now. And my clients, and it all comes down to the mind. It all comes to, oh my gosh, I just thought it was only this way, or I thought that it could only be this way. It really is a feeling. And you can see those that feel, because there's a genuineness. There's a genuine feeling that will come out of you. And I think that this is what the universe is cracking open in all of us, is that genuine feeling inside of all.
Yes, the richness of our true self is emerging from the egg. So it's going to be a spectacular new moon, and if you're willing to work with it, it's going to be an amazing 2 weeks.
Well, Chris, I can't wait to see. Next week we got Sun and Jupiter conjunct, which is my favorite alignment of the year. And And look back at your guys' lives. Last year we had the Sun and Jupiter conjunct in Taurus, so we have not felt that in Gemini.
Yes. So
we almost didn't get it this year because it's at the final degrees.
right, it's tail end of the journey, but I think that's going to make it even more exciting when we pass through that timeline, because we will see a lot of the things that we've been working on finally start to manifest.
Why do you think, it's felt like a longer journey than usual? The Sun and Jupiter aren't meeting till the end. And what are the Sun and Jupiter? Leo, Sag. I don't know if you've ever hung out with a Leo and a Sag, but that's a party. So there is a party coming our way, and it's exciting.
Yes. Well, David, it was wonderful chatting with you, and I think that we have shared some thoughts that people can actually implement in their life, and that's the good news.
I agree. Well, thanks so much, Chris, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.